Welcome to Eastlink Community TV. Tonight's episode of Evolution Nova Scotia Martial Arts is a special feature tonight. Tonight we are guests at the dojo of a Nova Scotia legend in the martial arts world, Sensei Jim Maloney. Hall of Famer, a Canadian Black Belt Hall of Fame. He is the Grand Chief of Uechi Ryu Karate here in Canada, and it's a real pleasure to have this man in my presence tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sensei. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sensei, you've been around the world, you've trained, and you come from such humble beginnings here in Nova Scotia. And it's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Where did your journey begin, sir?
Well, obviously, I was born in Indian Brook, Shubenacadie, 1945, after the war. My dad came home from serving overseas for 5 years. And I'm after the war baby. So I was brought home, I was born December 21st, 1945. Brought home on a horse and wagon. I'm told it was Christmas Day.
You're a Christmas baby.
Yeah.
Sensei, in those days, it was very hard for Nova Scotia's Mi'kmaq people. How tough was it, and what resonated you out of those early years so much?
Well, actually, when you're that poor and destitute, you don't really know the circumstances, or there's no comparison. That's life, as anybody that lives in small communities where there's lots of poverty. We had no running water, no electricity. Those days, the only person that had electricity would have been the Indian agent, the nuns, and the priest. And there would have been no telephones in anybody's homes. Wood stoves and plastic or cardboard for windows. No central heating, obviously. Yes. You know, you had to wake up in the morning and break the ice in the wash basin to wash your face, and no such thing as brushing your teeth. Yes. You know, you didn't have a luxury of that. And no breakfast, you know, and off to school you went. And that was the start of your day. Going to school, getting indoctrinated into Christianity.
It was very hard, the conversions and the reforming of all that at that time.
Well, it was difficult to be made ashamed of who you were, to be told that, you know, your language was no good, your culture was no good, your spirituality was wrong. You were less than human. You were not considered a human under the Indian Act. And you're just wards of the government living in townships.
Your survival at that time was your family, those around you. You held it together by the elders and your culture, correct?
Well, it had a lot to do with my dad. And of course, my mom died when I was young. I have very little memories of her. I don't know what she cooked, or I don't know what she laughed like. I don't know what her favorite foods were. I don't know anything about her. So it obviously was a pretty traumatic experience when my mom died. Yes. And I would have been 10 or 11 years old at that time. Of course, we wake everybody in the home still to this day. And I can remember the wake. I can remember that we had plenty of food from people bringing food in. Those were probably the most memorable times that I had about my mother, really.
Yes, yes, yes. You spoke earlier of your father. Your father was a World War II veteran.
Yes.
You had an uncle in Vimy Ridge, Peter Maloney.
Yes, thank you.
You have such an incredible history of those that gave, that made that sacrifice, and yet they returned home to be considered subhuman.
Well, it wasn't the war that damaged our people, our warriors, our soldiers, the Mi'kmaq men. We had 93% eligible Mi'kmaq men volunteered for the Second World War. And these were men with family. These weren't like kids today, 18, 19 years old. My dad would have been 33 years old, 34 years old when he joined the military and came home. He had 8 or 9 children when he decided to go in.
Remarkable.
And came home 39. Well, went in 1939, came home in 1944. So it was the treatment that they got after they got home. I think that destroyed most of them because they had a taste of the military where pretty much everybody was treated evenly in the military. Right. And they were worth their value in the military. And when they came back home, they couldn't vote, couldn't go to the local legion, couldn't drink with the other soldiers. So the ones that did come back resorted to alcohol and, of course, poverty. So they drank shaving lotion, vanilla lotion extract, because it was illegal for them to have alcohol of any kind.
That's right, yes.
And homebrew. So a lot of them died as a result of alcohol poisoning from different types of alcohol that they got out of boot polish, shoe polish, and aerosol cans, and shaving lotions, wherever they could get the alcohol. And actually, I was embarrassed that my father was an alcoholic, but I didn't, sadly at the time, I didn't realize what he had gone through, because they certainly never spoke about it.
No, that is really reflective of that whole generation. They kept it in. They held it to them. The Maloney family, your family, it transcends the U.S.-Canada border. It's all through this region.
Of course. We've never put the border there, so obviously we can travel back and forth.
It was never your border, was it?
No.
You had the guts to hitchhike to Boston. Take me there. What happened? What prompted you to get moving and stand up and not take it and just keep going?
Well, it was out of survival. It was out of necessity to go to Boston, to hitchhike to Boston. There was nothing else.
And hitchhike, like you didn't have a bus to get you to the main highway.
Hitchhike, man.
Nobody gave you
I didn't know where Boston was. I didn't know what Boston was. I had no idea the size of Boston. I had no idea. I had a broken down radio hooked to a car battery. It was locked on 2 stations. One was WBC Boston, and one was Wheeling, West Virginia. Wow. Boston was the closest.
Yes.
And I'd look up there, and they'd say, "Whoa, man, Steve, big all your cats out there in Rockberry, whoa." And I'd say, "Man, what a happy place."
Yes.
I'm going there.
That's what started it, wasn't it?
I'm going there. As 11, 12-year-old. Yeah, that was and I couldn't wait. And it was the right thing to do. Saved my life. We were working for the man, picking freaking blueberries, raking blueberries and picking potatoes in Maine, living in a tar paper shack on the side of the road. My dad and I would hitchhike down there with pots and pans and take a 2-day trip, and we do that year after year. And then we had a really rough year. There was no money, and I told my father over the fire that night, I said, "Dad," I said, "I can't go back to school." I had rotten teeth, I had boils on my face, I had no clothes, and he said, "I don't know." He said, I really wanted you to go finish high school." I said, I can't. I said, it's just, woke up the next day and I told him I'm going to Boston. I walked out to the road and I knew that way was away from Nova Scotia.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
He never knew I made it till a year and a half later, because we never wrote, no telephones, no nothing. I worked as a porter, and I had a job burning trash in a big grocery store. W.T. Grant's was a big grocery store.
You had the opportunity to meet a man who's very incredible in his own right, Sensei George Mattson.
Yes, saved my life.
Please tell us how that all occurred. What happened?
Saved my life. Karate was just a funny word. Judo was the big thing them days. If you studied judo in the military or something like that, you were phenomenal. You know, everybody said, oh, they know judo. But karate was a very secret society. And I had to get a car part. My brother wrote me a letter to get him a car part. And I went looking for this car part. And right next to the Western Auto car part store was a karate school. Mattson's I didn't know the name. It just said karate, right? So I got the part and I memorized the address and I decided I'd go back there. So a couple of weeks later I went back there and they told me it was $90 to join for the first 3 months. So I left and I worked and I took a job working at the fish plant on my day off, throwing fish around, shoveling fish around. And I kept that little money, and it was because every time I made $15, $20, I needed it. We needed it. So it was very difficult to...
Still survival.
Never want to get $90.
Yes, yes. There was still food on the table, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I managed to get up to, I think, $35. And I'm going to try again, right? So I went down, and there was a different guy at the door. And he said, yeah, this is $90. I said, man, look, I've been trying to save money for the last 3 months. I can't get enough money. I didn't even think of a bus fare or anything, nothing. I said, I reached in my pocket. I gave everything I had. And it was, I think, about $35. And he looked at me and he said, all right. He says, but you'll need to pay next month. I said, yeah, I can do that. And of course, I didn't know if I could or couldn't. And I said, now can I see the class? He sort of sighed a little bit. He said, yeah, he said, you can watch from the door. So he opened the door for about 15, 20 seconds, and the stench and the smell and the sweat that came out of that door was like, it was like, oh my God. But they were all sweaty in there, and they had no tops on, you know, and they were working, and then he closed the door. I guess after 4 or 5 months, they started getting pretty impressed with my abilities and moved me into an intermediate class. And then after a year, they moved me into an advanced class. I was there about almost 6, 7 months before I even met Sensei George Mattson, because I was being taught by the underlings, and he was teaching the main people. And I even used to practice what I'd say to him when I finally met him, you know. And one day I was changing, getting ready to come out to class, and he come by, hey, how you doing? And of course I was in shock, so I didn't say nothing. So I said, now he's going to think that I'm ignorant, that I didn't say hello. In '69, Bruce Lee come to town. So they asked me to do some media press releases, sparring and drills with them. So I did that at Mattson Academy, Sensei Mattson's dojo with Bruce Lee. So now my picture is on the front page of the Boston Globe. So my buddies, my childhood friends that I grew up with, see the newspaper. They can't believe it. No, no, no. This is
They couldn't believe it.
this
no.
is crazy.
It's impossible dream.
How could this guy be this? Because we've been with him. We've seen him. We've seen him last week. We've seen him before. Here he is with Bruce Lee, a black belt champion, on the front of the Boston Globe. So they come to my apartment, knocking on the door, with newspaper in hand. I didn't even see it. They brought the newspaper to me.
Wow, at
You
that
know,
time.
Yeah, they woke me up, like, banging on the door in the morning, like 10 o'clock in the morning. What the? That's it.
It must have been an incredible moment for you to come from the hard times.
Yeah.
To
So
Boston.
the cat was out of the bag.
Yeah, cat was out of the bag.
Yeah.
And you was quick as a cat at those days, weren't you?
Well, it was kind of funny the way it happened anyway, So he had a son by the name of Kanai Uechi, who I met, and who Sensei Matson met. And Sensei Matson trained privately with Tomiyoshi Sr.'s son,
Right.
Ryu Tomiyoshi. So Ryu Tomiyoshi and Kambum's son, Kanai Uechi, opened a school in Okinawa. Sensei Matson was in Okinawa in the military. He started studying now with direct descendants from Kambum Uechi and Shishiwa.
He was getting it right from the source.
Right from the source.
Unchanged, unfiltered.
Exactly.
And here he is, a Caucasian, an American.
Blue-eyed, light-haired.
A
They
soldier.
just dropped the bomb 8-9 years earlier.
That's right. Incredible.
So he wasn't the most popular guy in the dojo.
He would have had to train hard and
Yeah.
protect himself.
Yeah.
And that would have been a tough
But the
condition to learn.
Okinawans are very humble people. They're very respectful, humble people. If you bumped into them, they'd say, "Excuse me."
Yeah.
They're beautiful, beautiful people. So Sensei studied with them and eventually came back to the United States in '58 and he was charged by the Master Kanai Uechi to spread Uechi Ryu in America.
And it did.
And he did. He wrote a book and he did. The family has a very kind heart towards me and my respect for them too. To the point when Kame, the son, third generation, came here to Canada, I shared the sweat lodge with him. Yes. And our spirituality and culture are quite similar.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, he was very, very amazed by it.
It must have been as much of a reverence for him and a special moment for you. It was
Yeah.
cultures coming together, sharing meditation together.
Well, one of the things, and again, not so much about me, but show you the humbleness and the way they feel about people and the respect that they show. Kamai had done some testing in New England. And of course, he's just speaking through an interpreter and what have you. And he says, "No, Jim-san, we're going to do your testing in Canada. A special test for you in Canada for your students." I said, "Okay." So we came back here. And of course, now I got all my students here, 100 and some people here for Kamai to do the test. And he come up and to give me my test, and he had a speech written, and he had the speech written like this, and he started. And he started crying. And he stepped off, and he had the interpreter read the speech for him.
He was that overcome.
Yeah. So we're driving in the car, and the interpreter told me, I thought he was sleeping. He was in the back seat, and I was sitting there, and I looked over. He looked like he was sleeping. And the interpreter Nesta Falta, who speaks fluent Japanese and is a champion kata man himself, knows the family well. He said, he said, that was very interesting. What happened? He said, I've never seen that before. I've never seen him be that emotional. And I said, yeah. I said, did Sensei say why? And as I asked him that, a hand came on my shoulder from the back seat, and he says, that's because you remind me of my father. One thing that I like about the Okinawan style, they leave a lot up to interpretation.
Very, very open.
Yeah. So, or the three katas, Sanchin, Seisan, Sensei Ryu.
How often do you travel and do seminars on an annual basis?
Probably about 7 or 8 times a year.
Right.
Yeah.
And Uechi Ryu is very strong here in Nova Scotia. It's
yes,
really
it is.
rooted. You've really rooted.
It's actually very strong in Canada. Yeah. Edmonton and Ontario, British Columbia.
Several hundred dojos?
No, not that many. There's probably, I would think maybe more, 25, 30 dojos, which is pretty good.
It is.
Spread around. Like I said, it's very difficult for people to get black belts. Very difficult. And then very difficult to get people that not only a black belt, but that are instructors, as you know.
Yes.
Right. So
yes.
You could have somebody who's very proficient and they may be a very good fighter, but they just don't have the instruction capabilities.
Yeah, they get it across to people, connect with
right.
people.
So we're reluctant on who teaches, and we're very reluctant on who gets a black belt. So with those strict guidelines, it's not going to flourish like a lot of systems that are not as strict in their promotions.
You don't give it away. It's very highly earned.
Yes.
And it's a very, speaking with Sensei Nago, he was talking about how hard they trained in the early years and how, he says it doesn't really attract people anymore, toughness and the physical ability, basically making steel out of a man. And
yeah, my guys can break baseball bats with their shins, with their forearms.
Yeah. I believe that.
You know,
After what I saw tonight, I believe it.
They can. That's, they're powerful, powerful men.
Uechi Ryu as a martial art, it's still evolving to some degree.
Yes. And I would say that with all sports, whether it be boxing, running, swimming, people are getting better. I mean, at one time they were trying to break the 4-hour marathon. It's just crazy how things have changed, right?
Things have changed substantially over the years.
And the same thing with the martial arts. It's gotten better and better and better. You got to remember, a lot of the people that studied martial arts years ago were farmers, were sharecroppers, were people that worked the land.
Yes.
They were sinewy and strong, powerful people just to begin with. Their hands were already tools.
That's right. Like the Okinawan people.
Yeah,
they were
already tools. So when I got to Boston and started martial arts, people thought my strength came from the martial arts. In reality, it was from cutting and splitting wood and lugging wood and chopping wood with an axe.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
I could hang on a beam and hold myself up on a beam, like a 2x6 beam, just like that. Yes. Would hold my weight just with my hands.
I believe you.
My hands were like tools, right? So, so a lot of that conditioning was already in me as a child, and nowadays, obviously, people don't do that. People are on their phones or on their computers, or you got a softer body to work with.
I'm conducting this interview with you, and I'm going to leave here tonight with a lot of personal reflection, and that speaks to your character incredibly.
Thank you.
And I knew coming up here tonight that there was something I was going to find. beyond an interview, beyond karate, beyond the martial arts. And it's the man,
Thank you.
Sensei Jim Maloney.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you. God bless you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Tonight has been an incredible journey for the show of evolution, Nova Scotia's martial arts. Tonight, not only did I meet the man who had a legendary name, even when I was a child and never knew what martial arts were, I knew of Jim Maloney. Today, I got to find out why I knew so much about him, even when I never met him. To interview a 10th Dan in Uechi Ryu, a well-respected and international man of his caliber, and to see what he brings to the table and where his heart comes from. This has been an incredible journey, and that man deserves of me. I thank you all for watching. This is Dwayne Robicheau for Nova Scotia's Martial Arts Evolution, and this is Eastlink Community TV here in Dartmouth at Tribal Boxing.
I'm not ready to write a book. I'm not finished yet.